The spring sun hung low over Nashville, painting the sky in hues of gold and pink. But for Sarah Thompson, the world was cloaked in gray. She sat on a weathered wooden bench outside Vanderbilt University Hospital, her hands clasped so tightly her knuckles gleamed white against the fading light. The air carried the sweet scent of blooming magnolias, and the hospital's glass facade shimmered like a beacon of hope. But hope was a stranger to Sarah today. Inside those walls, her husband, Michael Hayes, 34, lay fighting for his life in the ICU, his body betrayed by a disease they never saw coming. The chatter of passers-by, talk of weekend plans, new restaurants, or blooming gardens, felt like a cruel mockery of the life she once knew. Sarah, 32, a pediatric nurse who'd spent years mending broken bodies, was now powerless to save the man who was her everything. Michael was a force of nature, a carpenter whose hands could craft oak into art. He'd work long days in his workshop, sawdust clinging to his jeans, then come home to cook her favorite chili, his hazel eyes crinkling with a smile that promised everything would be okay. That smile was her anchor, her lighthouse in life's storms. But now, watching him fade behind sterile hospital walls, Sarah felt the ground beneath her crumbling, as if she were sinking into quicksand with no way out. Just 8 months ago, their life was a canvas of dreams. They'd lie awake at night, planning trips to the Smoky Mountains they couldn't yet afford, imagining a bigger house for the children they hoped to have, maybe even a golden retriever to chase fireflies in their backyard. Michael would tease her about her terrible sense of direction, promising he'd navigate their adventures. But then, one evening, he came home from the workshop pale and breathless, waving off his exhaustion with a tired grin. Just a long day, Sarah, he'd said, kissing her forehead. But the exhaustion didn't lift. It deepened, shadowed by bruises that bloomed across his arms like dark flowers. And nights when he gasped for air, his chest heaving as if the world itself was too heavy. Sarah, with her nurse's instincts, insisted on a doctor's visit. She expected something simple, a virus, maybe anemia. Instead, a hematologist delivered a diagnosis that shattered their world: aplastic anemia. A rare condition where Michael's bone marrow was failing, unable to produce the blood cells his body needed to survive. At 34, he was too young for this. Too vibrant. The only hope was a bone marrow transplant. But the catch was brutal. The best chance for a match was a close relative. And Michael had none. Orphaned at birth, raised in foster homes across Tennessee. He had no family tree, no siblings or parents to turn to. They joined the National Bone Marrow Registry. But the doctors were blunt. Finding a match from a stranger could take months, even years. And Michael's time was measured in weeks. Sarah tried to be his rock, holding his hand in the hospital, whispering, "We'll beat this, Mike." But alone, she unraveled. In the quiet of their bathroom, she'd sob into a towel, muffling her cries so he wouldn't hear. She was a nurse, trained to save lives. Yet she couldn't save his. The fear of losing him consumed her, the man who'd carved her a cedar jewelry box for their first anniversary. Who'd written, "You're my home," on a scrap of paper she still kept in her wallet. The thought of a world without his laughter, his steady presence, was unbearable. Yet, with every passing day, she felt it creeping closer. That morning, the doctor's words had cut deeper than any blade. Dr. Larson, a kind man with tired eyes, pulled her aside in the hospital corridor. "Sarah, we're running out of options. Without a donor soon?" He didn't finish, but the silence said enough. She nodded, tears burning her cheeks, her mind screaming that she was failing him. She'd seen death in her work, children she couldn't save, families she'd comforted, but nothing prepared her for this. She stumbled outside to the hospital courtyard, desperate for air, for anything to steady her shaking world. Then, like a whisper from fate, she overheard it. 2 hospital staff, on a smoke break near the fountain, spoke in low tones. "That guy in ICU, Hayes, looks just like some dude I saw in Pine Hollow last summer. Same face, same build. Spooky, right?" Pine Hollow, a small mountain town 2 hours east of Nashville. Sarah's heart lurched. A coincidence? Maybe. But in that moment, A spark of hope flickered in the darkness. Fragile but fierce. Could this stranger be Michael's family? A lifeline hidden in a sleepy town? She froze, their words looping in her mind. Pine Hollow. She didn't know who this man was or if he could save Michael. But she knew one thing. She had to find out. The road to Pine Hollow stretched out like a ribbon of asphalt through Tennessee's rolling hills, where wildflowers swayed in the spring breeze and the horizon shimmered with promise. Sarah Thompson, 32, gripped the steering wheel of her old Subaru, her heart pounding with a mix of dread and determination. Nashville's skyline had long faded in her rearview mirror, replaced by fields of green and the distant hum of cicadas. 2 hours ago, she'd overheard a conversation that lit a spark in her despair. A stranger in Pine Hollow who looked like her husband. Michael Hayes, 34, now fighting for his life in Vanderbilt's ICU. Could this man be his family? A chance to save him from the aplastic anemia stealing his strength? Sarah didn't know, but she clung to that fragile hope like a lifeline. Her only map a blurry photo of Michael on her phone and a whispered prayer, please. Let this be real. Pine Hollow was a speck of a town. The kind where time seemed to pause. And folks still waved at strangers from their porches. Sarah had visited once during nursing school, helping at a community health fair, and remembered its quiet charm, wooden bridges, dusty streets, and the scent of pine lingering in the air. Now, as she crossed the creaking bridge into town, her pulse raced. She parked outside a weathered general store, its faded sign reading, Hollow Mercantile. Clutching her phone, she stepped inside, the bell above the door jingling softly. The clerk, a man in his late 50s with a graying beard and kind eyes, glanced up from his newspaper. Help you, ma'am? He asked, his drawl warm but curious. Sarah's hands trembled as she held out her phone, showing Michael's photo, a candid shot of him laughing, sawdust in his dark hair, his hazel eyes bright. I'm looking for someone who looks like this man. I don't know his name, but I heard he lives here. The clerk's eyes widened, and he leaned closer, studying the image. Well, that's gotta be Caleb Henderson. Lives out on County Road 6, by the cornfields. Spit an image of him. Sarah's breath caught. Caleb Henderson. A name. A lead. A flicker of possibility. The clerk scribbled directions on a napkin, and she thanked him, her voice barely steady, before rushing back to her car. County Road 6 wound through towering pines and open fields, where a soft drizzle began to fall, misting her windshield. Sarah's heart thumped as she spotted a rusted mailbox with Henderson painted in peeling letters. The house beyond was old, its clapboard siding worn by years of sun and rain, surrounded by corn stubble and muddy tire tracks. A swing creaked in the wind, and a dog's bark echoed faintly. She sat in her car for a moment, gripping the wheel, doubt creeping in. What if this was a mistake? What if she was chasing a ghost? But then she pictured Michael, his frail hand in hers, his smile hiding the fear in his eyes, and she stepped out into the rain. The porch steps groaned under her weight as she knocked. First softly, then with urgency. The door creaked open, revealing a man taller than she'd expected. Broad-shouldered but slightly stooped, with dark blonde hair falling over his forehead. His eyes, those piercing hazel eyes, identical to Michael's, stopped her cold. Can I help you? He asked, his voice deep and cautious, like someone unused to visitors. Sarah held out her phone, her hands shaking. This is my husband, Michael Hayes. People say you look like him. The man, Caleb Henderson, frowned, staring at the photo for what felt like an eternity. His expression shifted, confusion, then disbelief, and something raw, almost pained. He rubbed the back of his neck. Well, damn, he muttered, looking at her with softened eyes. Who are you? Sarah, his wife, she said, her voice breaking. He's in the hospital, dying. He needs a bone marrow transplant. And he has no family. But I heard about you. And I had to come. Caleb stepped aside, gesturing to a chair inside his humble home, wood floors, mismatched furniture, the faint smell of coffee and leather. He sat across from her, elbows on his knees, studying the photo again. I think he might be my brother, he said, his voice low and heavy. Sarah's heart stopped. Your brother? Caleb nodded, his jaw tight. Our mom wasn't much for parenting. Had a lot of kids. Different dads. When I was 6, she had a boy and gave him up at the hospital. Signed papers and walked away. I was too young to do anything. But I never forgot him. Didn't even know his name until now. His voice cracked, and he rubbed his face with both hands. Michael Hayes. Huh? Sarah's eyes filled with tears. He spent his life wondering if he had family. He thought he was alone. Caleb stood abruptly, grabbing his truck keys. I'll do it. The transplant. If I'm a match, I'm in. When do we go? Sarah stared, stunned by his instant resolve. She'd braced for hesitation, maybe even rejection, but Caleb's certainty was like a lifeline thrown across a raging sea. That evening, as rain streaked the windshield, Sarah led the way back to Nashville, Caleb following in his battered pickup. Her chest felt lighter, hope no longer a flicker but a steady flame. At Vanderbilt, she guided Caleb through the sterile halls to Michael's room. Michael was awake, propped up by pillows, his skin pale but his eyes brightening when he saw Sarah. Then they landed on Caleb, and his mouth fell open, as if staring into a mirror. Caleb stepped forward, his voice thick. I think I'm your brother. For a moment, silence held them. Michael's eyes welled, and he whispered, my brother? Caleb took his hand, gripping it firmly. We'll talk later, but right now, I'm here to save you. The tests were rushed, and when the hematologist returned with a relieved smile, Sarah's knees nearly buckled. Caleb's a near-perfect match, she said. One of the best we've seen. Tears streamed down Sarah's face as she turned to Caleb. You can save him. He nodded, resolute. Then let's do it. The transplant was scheduled for dawn. Sarah barely slept, her mind racing through every what-if. Caleb, calm as ever, joked with the nurses as they prepped him. But his eyes softened when he looked at Michael. Never thought I'd meet my brother like this, he said, but I'm glad it's you. The procedure went smoothly, and as Michael's new stem cells began their work, Sarah sat by his bed, watching color return to his cheeks. His breaths growing steadier. Caleb visited later, tired but content, and Michael clasped his arm weakly. You gave me a second chance, he whispered. Caleb grinned. You gave me family. We're even. In the weeks that followed, Michael's strength returned like a slow tide. Each day brought small victories, a steadier step, a louder laugh. Caleb became a fixture, sleeping on hospital couches when rules kept him from Michael's room. One crisp autumn afternoon, Michael took his first steps outside, leaning on Sarah as they walked the hospital's garden path. I forgot how good the sun feels, he said, squeezing her hand. A week later, he was discharged, and they returned to their cozy wooden house on Nashville's edge. Caleb's truck rumbling behind. The house felt fuller, as if it had been waiting for this moment. Caleb joined their Sunday dinners, sharing stories of his childhood in Pine Hollow, filling in the gaps of Michael's past. One evening, he handed Michael a worn pocket knife with their father's initials etched into the handle. It's all I've got of him, Caleb said. It's yours now. Michael held it, tears falling silently. Pine Hollow's community rallied, sending cards and casseroles, their kindness a reminder that goodness thrived even in dark times. Months later, Michael was back in his workshop, sanding wood with that old spark. One night, he led Sarah to their porch, revealing a new rocking chair he'd crafted. For you, he said, and she sat, tears blurring the stars above. One golden evening, they walked a tree-lined road near Pine Hollow, hand in hand, Caleb ahead carrying a neighbor's kid on his shoulders. Michael squeezed Sarah's hand. I thought being an orphan meant I'd always be alone. I was wrong. I've got you. And now him. Sarah smiled, her heart full. Family's not just blood, Mike. But when it is, it's a miracle. Around a bonfire that night, with Caleb's laughter mingling with the crackle of flames, Sarah rested her head on Michael's shoulder. Life had broken them, but it had also rebuilt them. Stronger. Together. From despair, they'd found hope. From loss, a brother. And in that moment, Sarah knew, sometimes, life gives you exactly what you need. Just when you're ready to give up,